I'm more than happy about a very special podcast episode today. We will release it as well as a video podcast episode as a regular podcast episode you can find on all the podcast channels where we usually release our podcasts. And I have a very special guest. It's the first time actually that the guest in this podcast is a prime minister of a European country. It's the newly appointed prime minister of the Republic of Kosovo, Avdullah Hoti. Avdullah Hoti, I'm more than happy that you made it to the European Parliament, that you made it to our common capital, which is Brussels. It's the European capital. It's true, that's the capital for Austrians like me, for all other Europeans, as well as for the people of Kosovo. And it seems important to me that beside all the political talks we had already today and we will have today, and beside all the negotiations you are especially doing at the moment and you were doing last week in a different capital, in the one of the United States of America, in Washington, D.C., and you are doing this week in Brussels, besides all these political talks and negotiations, beside diplomacy, I would say, I'm more than happy that we can have a few minutes of talk and chat in this podcast episode with regard to friendship and connection between the people of Europe, of different European countries, of Austria, Kosovo and all the other countries, because it's important that we know each other and that we meet each other. And even if it's not possible to meet personally during the pandemic, it's important that we meet each other online, like today. And we can convey messages about ourselves, about our view of things, about our common European identity. And that's something that impresses me very much since I have known the Republic of Kosovo and its people. That these people, the citizens of Kosovo, really feel a strong European identity. It's even a case that due to many studies, it's the largest percentage of all Western Balkan countries in Kosovo of people who strongly feel a European identity. So let's start right away in this field, European identity of Kosovo. How come? Why is that the case that Kosovo people feel truly European? In some cases more than people of member states of the European Union of today.
Thanks very much. It's a great possibility that we talk today, and we consider Brussels as our European capital as well. Maybe the shortest answer to your question why we in Kosovo have the highest percentage of people that support EU integration process is because historically we are Europeans and we share exactly the same values of freedom, democracy, development, good neighborhood relation, respecting people's rights, and all these basic human values. I think these make us fully European as any other citizens in all European countries. And we are fully committed to move forward in the European integration path. We are doing our utmost as a new government now to show our strong commitment, to reaffirm actually the strong commitment for the EU integration process.
That's beautiful to hear, and that's so important because after the last week you had to discuss in Washington, D.C., which was also important. We will go ahead later on with issues that were discussed there. You are coming home because Brussels is also your home, your capital, the home capital of also the people of Kosovo. That's my approach to things, and you received here in the European Parliament and here in the capital of Europe as a prime minister of a European country. And this is so important that this is underlined, even if Kosovo is not yet an EU member state, as we all know, and a lot has to be done towards EU integration, but step by step we can reach that. And I'm not that patient regarding that, because European Union demands a lot, reforms in many different fields when it comes to fighting corruption, when it comes to rule of law, and European Union supports a lot in terms of money, for example. But in my view, and I state that as a parliamentarian in European Parliament, in my view, it's not balanced. The support on the one side and what EU demands on the other side is not balanced. For example, EU has promised for many, many years visa liberalization. There were a lot of criteria Kosovo had to fulfill. Kosovo fulfilled each and every criteria.
That's right.
And anyway, after the Commission assessed the situation and recommended visa liberalization for the people of Kosovo, after the European Parliament, we are in the premises of European Parliament at the moment in this studio. European Parliament voted in favor of visa liberalization of Kosovo. It's only a small majority, it's a small minority. That's what I want to say, a small minority of member states who block this whole process. And that's something we have to deal with within today's European Union. We all know there are five, again, a small minority, 5 member states of the 27 of today's European Union which have not yet recognized Kosovo, but there is a recognizing country new on this global scale. It's the state of Israel, which has last week stated that it will recognize Kosovo. For me, this was a very special moment since I also feel a strong connection with Israel. I'm engaged with Middle East policies. Israel is the only democratic state, the only rule of law-based state in the Middle East. It's a strong partner of Europe. And now there's a mutual recognition between two states I feel strongly connected with, I feel true friendship with Israel and Kosovo. That's a big achievement coming home from Washington, D.C., because this is the place where it was negotiated. It was not in Kosovo, not in Israel. That's the way politics sometimes works, but it happens. Isn't it a big success?
Indeed, I think it's a huge step forward. Because, you know, we engaged in dialogue with Serbia since 2011. We reached a number of agreements until 2017, actually, and then after that the dialogue was blocked. And now this economic normalization agreement reached in Washington, D.C., I believe is a historic moment, is a huge step forward toward final agreement with Serbia that should lead to full normalizations of relations between our two countries, and of course it should mean mutual recognition between the two countries. But the recognition coming from Israel is great development. I think it will open a new window for Kosovo to establish in international arena. We are trying to reach to all countries in the world to show that we are a credible partner and we can contribute to peace and stability in the region and beyond the region. As a new government, I think we have shown enough signs that we take this very seriously, not just the sake of sitting on the dialogue table, but reaching and working toward the final agreement. As you know, the dialogue process is continuing here in Brussels. After I left Washington, I came here to Brussels. I had a high-level meeting with the Serbian part, showing full commitment that we as a country are willing to fully normalize our relations as two countries, because that's in the best interest of our citizens, the citizens of Serbia, and the whole region. It's good to hear clear signs from the EU institutions that Western Balkans belongs to the EU. There's no question about that. What we need is concrete steps toward this process. And as you mentioned, an important step would be to move forward as soon as possible with visa liberalization for Kosovo, because first, we are the only country in the region without visa-free regime to Schengen zone. And second, as you said, we met all requirements. And what my government now is doing in making sure that we keep a good track of those criteria that we met back in 2018. I was honored to be here today in this wonderful building. I hope that very soon we as Kosovo, as a country, we will have our MPs here so that they can engage in a dialogue in policy making at the European level.
I look forward to the day when I will be able to cooperate with MEPs, members of European Parliament from Kosovo here in this house, and we have to move on and go ahead on the path there. And I really appreciate that you, in each and every meeting and negotiation, as I experienced it today, you stick always also on visa liberalization, because this is really the next step, which is overdue actually, which has to be realized, which has to be done, where European Union really has to deliver what has been promised for many years. I guess we should provide the people interested in this podcast episode today with facts and figures on Kosovo. You have mentioned the economic relation within the region, especially with Serbia, which was also negotiated in Washington, D.C. I would understand the whole situation as, let's say, a commitment to fulfill things in economic relations that have already been theoretically possible in the past years, but now you will do it. And the Serbian side is obviously also willing to do it, which will be very positive for a prosperous future for all people in the region, as you have mentioned, but I would say for all Europe, because Kosovo is a European country, Western Balkans are European. These are 6 European countries which are an important part of Europe. Maybe I will add something on that later on. But what's the economic perspective you see now for your country and for your citizens after this agreement you have achieved in Washington, D.C.?
This agreement that was reached in Washington is more of an economic nature. We call it the economic normalization agreement. There is a list of large-scale investment infrastructure projects that would make our economies more linked to each other, such as the rail and highway and gas pipeline, or the support that is expected to be given to small and medium enterprises, or the idea of recognizing diplomas and certificates that are issued by institutions in 2 countries so that people could move freely to find jobs in both countries. I think these are the elements of this agreement that would change the economic landscape in the coming years in our 2 countries, but beyond that, because these infrastructure projects are of regional importance, not for the 2 economies. Our economy, at least for Kosovo, is relatively small compared to average European economies. But when our economy is taken into consideration, into regional context, I think it's a great opportunity for EU companies, regional companies, to be located there so that they could reach other destinations in the region and beyond. With these infrastructure projects, in 5 years, Kosovo is going to be transformed into a center, into a hub to move to other countries. Right now, we face very high unemployment rate. Now the situation due to COVID has actually worsened the situation. We have developed an economic recovery package to support businesses at the amount that they were affected by the COVID situation, which is close to 5% of GDP, which is the amount of the budget or the fund, the economic recovery fund that we are going to provide to economy. So all in all, we do have great expectations due to this agreement and to the discussions that I had today and previously in my previous visits here in Brussels, meeting various institutions, EU institutions and member countries as well. I firmly believe that we can move forward pretty soon.
That sounds very good, and I really look forward to a new scenario where Kosovo can become a hub. Due to its geographical state, it's possible. It's an opportunity. And if you work together over the borders towards Serbia, but also to the other countries in the Western Balkans, this is a large opportunity. What I would like to add, due to my understanding and experience with Kosovo, it's that you are not only the youngest state of Europe, so your statehood is the youngest one, but you also have the lowest average age of all European countries. So many young people live in Kosovo. Many young citizens are there in your country, And I have experienced it very, very often, and I experience this nearly each day, of course, every week, that they seek education, they are well educated, they want to work, and of course, they want to reach out to other parts of the world. It will be important that they help to strengthen their country, that they remain at home and create something, build up small and middle-sized enterprises, or get engaged in fields where they are interested, as far as I know, in a large part, like in software architecture and other fields of digitalization, software engineering. There are already Austrian companies from my home country engaged with these young people. Isn't that also a future perspective, even in a country that's, let's say, more or less defined by farming and agriculture, which is important, of course, very, very important part of economy. Good food, good nutrition is important, but it can't be all. So you also need positive perspectives for the future. You've already mentioned infrastructural projects for Kosovo. Do you also see opportunities in this field of the digital age, of digitalization?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you said, we have the youngest population in Europe. You know that back in 2016 we signed the SAA, Stabilization and Association Agreement, and we are working on that in terms of easing the barriers, trade barriers, and joining the EU market in terms of trade. And now the EU is our main trade partners compared to other countries or group of countries in terms of economic relations. But we can exchange goods and services to EU and EU countries individually, but people cannot move. That's why I always stress the need for visa liberalization, because when goods move, it's people that move goods. So we can even increase furthermore trade relations if we have this visa liberalization issue. With all this young population and almost everybody speaking foreign languages, I think we have great potentials. We need that to move forward in terms of unifying the labor market and for study purposes as well. In Kosovo, you would find the highest number of graduated people from EU countries.
Beautiful.
But they need to move to the EU or come back, or for EU businesses to be able to be located in Kosovo so that we can integrate our society and our economy.
For example, in the Austrian city of Graz, the capital of the region of Styria, many people from Kosovo have studied and graduated, and there are many other universities in Europe where people from Kosovo have graduated. You've mentioned traveling. Visa liberalization remains very high on our agendas, as we have already discussed. And this leads me to the next issue of the diaspora. There's a large diaspora. Many people from Kosovo live in other parts of the world. Of course, many in Europe, also a large number in the United States, I guess. And it also means a lot to economy, isn't it? Because
Indeed.
they are working hard, they are earning money outside their country in other parts of the world, but they are sending money home, isn't it? And this is a major part, isn't it?
A quarter of the population lives abroad.
A quarter.
Most of them located in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, and other EU countries as well. But in these three countries, almost 500,000 people from Kosovo live in these countries. The remittances that they send back are around 13-14% of GDP, which is significant in terms of creating domestic demand for goods and services. But we want to go beyond that. We want to make sure that we actually have businesses even from our diaspora and businesses from these countries where our diaspora is actually located. Maybe it's important to mention here that we have established a network of businesses, of our diaspora businesses in Austria, in Switzerland, in Germany, and in other countries, which is working great in terms of creating that necessary connection between businesses located in Kosovo and businesses in all these countries where our diaspora is located.
Beautiful to hear that this connection remains. I always remember statistics in Austria which say that among all people from different countries, among all migrants, unemployment among people from Kosovo is the lowest. So people from Kosovo again show that they work hard and they want to earn money, raise their families, send money home, create a wealthy atmosphere even in difficult times and in a very difficult situation they are in. Because we should never forget about the recognition issue and all the other issues, not yet achieved normalization with Serbia. And people have to be aware of the fact, all Europeans have to be aware of the fact that it's not, let's say, a favor today's European Union would do to the 6 Western Balkan countries to include them in the European Union, but it's in the very core interest of today's European Union to include these 6 Western Balkan countries because of their European identity. And as we know, on a daily basis we experience that other parts of the world, other powers in the world, try to influence the Western Balkans, try to influence the people there, try to use different means and measures to gain economic benefits, and they are not based on European values, as you have mentioned it in the beginning. That's one of the reasons why I really appreciate and I adore the patience of the vast majority of the people of Kosovo to remain with their European identity, a European approach, even if things, let's say, last very long and sometimes seem to get stuck. And I like about your work, Honorable Prime Minister Hoti, the positive perspective for economy, because that's what will create wealth. And if things get in line with rule of law, if investments will come due to rule of law, and if we can manage that companies all over the world invest in Kosovo due to young educated people, due to the fact that they want to work and they are well educated and seek more education, study and so on, then a prosperous future is possible. And each and every Western Balkan country, especially Serbia, has to understand that EU integration will only be possible via mutual recognition. And normalization. And that's what you work on very, very hard. I hope to see you many times in Brussels. I have seen you in the past. I see you now as a Prime Minister. I look forward to our further cooperation in many different fields. It's a multi-partisan issue in the European Parliament as well as in my home country, Austria, to live and to create a good and ever closer partnership with the Republic of Kosovo. So I thank you for visiting European Parliament, our common capital, and for negotiating in the right direction and for seeking normalization, de-escalation, prosper and positive future. But the final word, of course, in order to make people well informed about the Republic of Kosovo is yours. So is there something you want to finish with this today podcast episode?
Thanks a lot, Mr. Randall. I was really honored today that I met the President of the European Parliament and you European parliamentarians sharing our views. My presence here today and before 2 or 3 weeks ago as well is to show our commitment that we are fully engaged in the process of EU integration process. We are, as you said, a young country, but we are a strong European country, and we deserve the European perspective. I think this is in the best interest of course, for citizens of Kosovo, for the region, but for the EU as a whole. So thank you very much, and it's a great opportunity for me to share all these views with you.
Thank you, Fare Menderit. All the best. Looking forward. Take care.
Thanks a lot.